Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About House. I'm Todd.
I'm Oana.
Okay, we're going to talk about how the real estate market is heating up, and it's getting so hot, some places they're having bidding wars.
Yes.
Now, we're going to go through an article. We're using this as an example. We're not going to talk about really specific markets, but we're just going to explain, have a discussion about how real estate is actually, home prices going up and down are really very hyper-local.
Okay. So the first thing we want to talk about is that there are places where not only are there bidding wars, but the bidding wars are substantial. We're not talking about $20,000, $50,000. We're talking about a whole lot more than that. So hang tight and we'll give you some really fun examples.
Okay, so we're going to go through this article. There's some key points of the article. There were a couple fun things I thought that were in here we could talk about.
Okay.
But this was sort of the headline. Wanda found this in her research, sent it to me. We decided to make a video on it. How buyers are winning bidding wars in a market where homes are selling for $620,000 over ask. That's obviously not in Nevada. You would think this is in California, but this specific example is not in California either. It says the spring home buying season could be bruising in this region where bidding wars are alive and well. So what we'll do is we'll just go through the first paragraph and talk about sort of the specifics of this one. Okay, so this was on Market Watch or one of the online publications. When Deneen Alati and Juan Parra made an offer on their first home in Verona, New Jersey, which I'm pretty sure is right outside New York City. In 2021, they were among 18 buyers who submitted an offer. They won the bidding war, packed their bags, and moved in. 4 years later, they were back on the market again, this time looking for a home in Park Slope, Brooklyn, New York. So this is like in Brooklyn. Okay. They weren't sure they could win another bidding war, but they still tried, offering $56,000 over the asking price. The strategy worked, and the couple got the house. Let's talk about the theory. Why, in theory, would you have a bidding war if the house is priced appropriately? It should basically sell for what it's listed for.
So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. The house was not priced appropriately. The house was priced to generate a bidding war. Okay. So remember, a list price is nothing more than an invitation to make an offer, right? I've said that a million times. And this is a perfect example of that. They priced the house in order to generate interest, knowing that it would sell for market value. Now, what is market value? Market value is what a buyer is willing to pay and a seller is willing to accept. That's how we establish market value. So these agents priced the home at a price that would generate a lot of interest. They had a lot of showings. They generated lots of offers. And amongst those offers, the sellers picked an offer that best fit their needs. Now, people's needs are not always about money, right?
Right.
Okay. So we have lots of examples where money was not the ultimate deciding factor, where maybe two offers were close, but maybe one offer waived contingencies, maybe one offer let the seller stay in for free for a certain amount of time, maybe the offer met the seller's desired closing date, so all kinds of different reasons. And this is a big part of the thing that I always talk with agents about is make sure you do your homework on the front end. Find out, if you're representing the buyer, what's it going to take to have the seller accept an offer. Almost always, it's not just the money, right? So having those conversations, agents honestly, they love to throw offers like throwing spaghetti at a wall without doing their homework. It's very important that agents do their homework and understand what the needs of that seller are, maybe the needs of the listing agent as well, so that they can better counsel the buyer how to make the best offer.
There are three strategies I hear about pricing a home. One is I'm going to price it way over market value. In the off chance some out-of-state buyer doesn't understand the market, they come here from California or New York and they think the house is reasonably priced and they just overpay a ton of money. Second strategy is you just list a house at market value because that's reasonably, you're communicating to people, you're willing to sell it for what it's worth. The third strategy is under market value to generate a bunch of interest, to get people, basically saying, look, we know the house is worth this, but we're now interested, so we're going to throw in an offer. In the 3,000, well, first of all, all of the homes we have flipped, have we ever priced a house over market value?
No, never.
It's usually right at or under, and it's only right at if it's a competitive price range, but usually a little bit under. In the 3,000 plus listings that we have sold, have we ever had something listed 10% over market value that somebody accidentally just bought over market value?
Except for the guy who bought the wrong house? No.
Oh, that was a funny story. We did a whole video on that. No, that was actually, it wasn't because it was more money. It was actually the price was the price, but they went to the wrong house. Like they wrote an offer on our listing, but they never looked at our listing, looked at a house across the street. We had a whole video on that. So that is not a good strategy. Now, Oana, why? The bottom line is that there's low inventory. I'll read this quote from the article. Home buying demand continues to outpace the supply of homes, even as mortgage rates have surged, making homeownership more expensive. In fact, it's gotten worse because we have no inventory. There's two things in here I thought were super interesting. The first thing was that you have more buyers than sellers because sellers really don't want to get rid of that 2% interest rate. They feel like they've borrowed money to buy this house, and if they sell the house, there's no way they're going to reutilize that money in a low interest rate.
Well, they basically have borrowed money for free, yes.
They borrowed money essentially for free. But the other thing I thought was interesting about this is because this sort of brings up a point about how are these. So the question is, well, people can't afford to buy because interest rates are so high, right? But that's sort of not really relevant here because the crash bros and these other people, when they do all these analysis, they always use two things that are almost never true. A median buyer buying a median home, which literally never happens. You got to remember that the bottom 30 to 40% of all homes are renters. So a median home would be a very low-end owner-occupied home. That an average owner-occupied home would be well above the median, and your actual median buyer is not buying an above median home. The other thing is that the play of cash on this. This is you see this in California. Someone says, I can't believe this person is paying $1.2 million for this, 4-bedroom house in San Diego, right? In Point Loma. But when they sold their house in, Palo Alto for $1.2 million or whatever, they can just use the cash. They're paying with cash.
Right.
So there's a lot of people with cash. Let's talk about that a little bit because you see a lot of cash offers.
Right. So there are a lot of people with cash. Cash comes for all sorts of reasons, right? People liquidate certain assets, whether those assets are an existing home or some other asset that they've liquidated, and people have cash. And remember, when people have cash, then they can use that cash either to purchase a property completely cash, or they can use that cash for a large down payment. So even if the income is not sufficient to qualify for a 20% down traditional loan, that's really not relevant if you have sufficient down payment. Now all of a sudden you're in that category where you can qualify for whatever the balance of the loan is. So there are lots of ways to manipulate that. I kind of wanted to address the inventory thing a little bit and backtrack a little bit. I am very aware that builders have delivered more homes in the last year or so than they have for many years in that duration. And so yes, the builder product is increasing inventory, but that's not keeping up with demand. So even though builders have created more inventory, the amount of demand between the builder product and the resale product do not combine to meet the overall demand that buyers are placing in the market. In
the last 15 years, for example, in Las Vegas, there are only 3 years where inventory was lower right now at this time in Vegas, and they were literally the pandemic years when it was a frenzy. Okay, here's another headline out of the article. Buyers are coming out of the woodwork despite high home prices. There is about $15 trillion in 3 buckets that households have. One is cash in their bank accounts, okay, it's called checkable deposits. 2 is household money in money markets. These are money markets. These are not the same as checkable deposits. And then the third is other short-term investments, which are effectively CDs and things like that that they have. They can immediately pull the access out, the money out. 15 trillion, there's 2 trillion a year in real estate purchased, which means If people liquidated their cash and just bought real estate, it would take 8 years to extinguish all the cash. And it would take about 4 years just to get back to the pre-2020 level of cash. So there's a lot of people sitting on a lot of cash. The homes that you see where they're selling over $5 million, what percentage of those are people getting loans and what percent are cash?
Over $5 million, they're all cash.
They're all cash.
With the exception of the owner carries. So we do have some owner carries at that point.
Tell them what owner carry is.
So an owner carry is where the buyer puts down some amount of money to make the seller comfortable. The seller collects that money, and the balance of the purchase price is then financed by the owner. Those tend to be short term. They tend to usually be under 3 years. They tend to be interest only with a balloon at the end. So that usually happens because the buyer maybe has some other investment that is paying a better yield, and so they don't want to liquidate that investment just yet, but they will liquidate it in the next 6 months, 12 months, up to 36 months, and then pay off the seller the remaining balance of the purchase price. If the buyer does not do that, then the seller has the right to foreclose on a property and regain ownership of the property.
A good example of that would be you have shares in like a startup or something that are locked, and you don't actually get the ability to access those, or there was some time frame after IPO or whatever before you could sell them. Like you're locked into some period,
right,
and you're waiting for that period to end, but you don't want to wait 2 years to buy a house, but you do have some cash.
Right.
So you take the cash, you put it down, and then you just make some payments every month, and then they still get their money in 2 years when you liquidate your thing. Here's another thing that I thought was pretty good. There's something in here I laughed at that's not actually true, but I'll read it to you. And then you can tell me if you have figured out what is not accurate in this. Okay, it says a house sold as is, okay, went for $620,000 over ask in New Jersey, $620,000 over ask. The home itself was ordinary. It was built in 1948 on a 1 acre lot. Okay, that's a hint right there, 1 acre lot. With 4 bedrooms and 2-car garage. Sold as is, real estate code for property needs some work. The single family home was put up as part of an estate sale. The owner had died at 100 years old. Effectively, if a home was built brand new and someone lived in it for 6 months, and you've seen this in the luxury market, someone will buy a house brand new, live in it for 6 months and sell it. When they sell it, they sell the house as is. But that doesn't mean it needs some work. It's a 6-month-old brand new house. What does as is mean? Is it an actual code word that means the house is trashed?
No, it doesn't. We also call it that it needs some love.
Okay.
So depending on the age of the home, depending on the market, it could mean a lot of things. It could mean that the property is dated, needs updating.
Okay.
It could mean that the property needs repairs.
Okay.
It could mean a lot of different things. So that kind of gives you an idea. So let me give you an example. So a home, one of my favorite things is, for example, we have a listing that is kind of sort of like this home in the sense that it's as is. It is being sold by the trustee for the beneficiaries that are not in a position to deal with this at this point in their lives. And this home is in a country club. It's guard gated. And as I like to say, it is vintage.
Right.
And that's in my vocabulary code for it's either a tear down or just about. It needs to be gutted and redone because it is original from 40, 50, 60 years ago, and it doesn't meet our needs of today.
Right.
So somebody sees the vision and somebody's going to get a great house.
So let me put a spin on this.
Okay.
A flipper comes in and buys the house.
That's exactly who's going to buy the house.
They completely rehab it, make it gorgeous.
Yep.
An inspector comes in and says, I cannot find anything wrong. This house is like a brand new house.
Okay, no inspector ever said that because they can't justify their fee for that.
Okay. When they put it on the market,
yes.
Is it still as is, or is it some other type of sold? What does the purchase agreement say? What's written into every purchase agreement?
So all buyers usually, I should rephrase that. Most buyers choose to have a due diligence period in which they can inspect the property and satisfy themselves regarding the condition of the property. Now,
Right.
they have two choices as to how they deal with that. They can still inspect the property and satisfy themselves regarding the condition of the property, but they can also say, I will not ask you for any repairs or any credits regarding the condition of the property, or they don't say anything. And then once they have their inspection, they may come back to the seller and say, hey, Mr. Seller, that electrical circuit needs to be fixed and the dishwasher leaks or whatever. So those are kind of the two buckets. Either somebody who says, I'm not going to ask you for anything, or somebody who does ask you for usually minor repairs.
So if a house is not sold as is in the purchase agreement, what do you mark to say that is it sold?
We don't.
So every house is sold as is.
Well, every house is sold as is, where is, until somebody asks for something.
Okay, this is what I laughed at in this article. It's not a code for the property needs some work. When we flipped a house, if we painted, carpeted, fixed everything, it was still as is. You're buying the house as it is. Even if it's a brand new builder construction, it's as is. The fact that you say, I want $500 for repairs, that's fine. But like the purchase agreement in Nevada, everything's as is.
Right.
Everything's as is. Mm-hmm. You're not getting a purchase of a house that in the future, like after you buy it, the previous owner will come back in later and fix stuff up or completely rehab the house for you. Everything's as is. So it's not actually a code word for property needs some work. Just like charming, if they say it's charming, it doesn't mean it's like a teardown or anything.
No.
That was their Freakonomics thing.
And cozy does not mean that that's small.
Okay, here's another thing about this. This $620,000 over ask. This house sold for like $1.2 million. The median market value of a house in this neighborhood was $2.5 million. What had happened is this owner had lived in the house forever, basically, I think since 1948, and had never changed the house. Mm-hmm. And everyone around him had torn down the houses and built these mansions. So the person that bought the house actually was only buying the lot. Mm-hmm. And there were multiple bids, and then they scraped the house.
Right.
Or they're planning on scraping the house and then building a brand new house on top of it. You see this in beach communities, very common.
Right.
Where, like in Coronado, there'll be a 7,000 square foot house with a 1,700 square foot lot that was built in the 50s, and 0 people are going to buy the house and live in it that way, unless local code says you can't tear down the house, so it can't do anything to the house.
Right. Yeah, so in this particular case, the house I think was listed for like $1.2 million. I think it sold for like $1.8 million, give or take. So that kind of gives you an idea. But again, remember, the list price was nothing more than an invitation to make an offer. Everybody saw the value, and everybody offered what the house was worth to them. And in the end, the house sold for market value, which is what a buyer was willing to pay and the seller was willing to accept.
The moral of the story is this. You cannot take something that's happening and paint a brush across the whole country with real estate, because the crash bros will focus on one little market where there's like more homes on the market than there was last year and say, oh my gosh, home prices are crashing in whatever, Austin or someplace like that. And then you take an area like this, which is a suburb of New York City, mm-hmm. or Brooklyn or something like that, where it's a crazy hot market. Like There's people, scrambling to purchase something and it's locked up. This includes DC, even though there was this rumor going around that like home prices are crashing in DC, but when you zoomed in on Alexandria, you could find 200 houses and only one would be on the market because no one's selling their homes there.
Right.
Yeah.
So this was a really interesting article regarding how property values are seen across the country, mm-hmm. and how buyers are behaving across the country. Hope that you got something interesting out of it. If you're wondering if we have multiple offers in Las Vegas, the answer is yes, we do. Do we have them on every property? Absolutely not. Just like in any of those markets, they don't have multiple offers on every property either. It's property specific, where there's value, there's interest, and that's how multiple offers appear. Regarding property values are, for the most part, across the country, either going up or stable. That's not in every market, but in most markets, I think that does pretty much cover it. As far as interest rates are concerned, I think we've all kind of come to terms with 7%, give or take, and I think people are sort of over that. Springtime is going to be a busy season. We're seeing that through the traffic in the open houses. We're seeing that through the new homes that are going under contract, as well as resale homes that are going under contract. It's going to be a busy springtime. If you're a seller, it's a great time to sell. And if you're interested in selling your property, please consider using our services. If you are a buyer, it's a great time to buy because we will have more properties on the market as sellers put their homes on the market. So you'll have more properties from which to choose. If you're looking to buy or sell anywhere in the U.S., please feel free to reach out to us. If it's here in Vegas, we might be the ones to help you. If it's somewhere outside of Vegas, then we will find you a phenomenal agent to work with. And we appreciate you watching. Please leave us your real estate related comments. We do read them. We do appreciate them. We like engaging with you. We do enjoy your company. Please like the video, subscribe, hit notification bell, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.